Well, hello, Dr. Coleman. That's not there. Good afternoon. This is the ROAR webinar series, and I am Josefina Bonilla, and the disappearing woman in front of you is Dr. Lisa Coleman. Dr. Coleman, welcome.
Thank you. Just need to get some water. How are you today?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I'm sporting my Ginsburg. Hope you like it.
I love it. I love it.
So just send me your address. I'm going to send you one.
Okay.
I thought maybe today we can talk about inspirational women.
Oh, I love that.
As the term of, so maybe some stories about some inspiring women. And I know that you studied women and gender.
Yes, I did.
Yes.
One of my degrees.
Yeah.
One of his many degrees.
One of her many degrees.
One of the many ones, you know.
So yes. I'm going to send it to you, or send you one.
I wish I had it right now.
I know. I actually was surprised. I got it on Amazon.
You did?
I did, because I felt like she was such an inspiration to so many people, including myself.
Yes.
And I feel like she's one of the few women that crossed not only gender barriers, but also cultural barriers too.
Yes, she did.
You know, like I've spoken to a number of friends, and they too find her an inspiration, and they're all women of color. So I find that interesting.
She was just such an inspiration to so many people, and also people across the partisan divide. She really was, and she really upheld that idea of what it means to work right in community with so many people who are different than yourself. And she did that. And I think one of the other great things, I think the other reason she's such an inspiration for so many women is also because of her relationship with her husband, right? They shared, like they took turns, He did something, she did something, and he supported her throughout that entire process. And I think that's one of the most amazing things also about her story and her life, is that she had someone in her corner like that who really also understood the importance of her work and understood as a woman that she had a lot to contribute and made space for that.
And I think that is pivotal, I think, for one's success, whether or not you're going through that journey by yourself or with someone else, how much greater it is. And she had children as well. So she was balancing being a career, being a mom, being a wife, being all these things, and what she stood for. She was so well grounded in the things that she stood for. So there was no questionables for her.
And that's what I mean. Even if you don't have a spouse or children, it's just finding that community of support, right? Finding the support that you need to be able to do the work. None of us can do this work in isolation. We have to do it in community, right? You and I are in community, right?
Right. That's right.
Right. And so we have to do that. And so I think to find those spaces where we can find people who are going to support, who are going to share the work, who are going to shepherd the work with us. I think that's really important. And she was able to do that. And then she was able to work with someone like Scalia. I mean, my goodness, right?
Exactly. Polar opposites in so many different areas, yet they were really good friends. And I think that's testament to how we can be as individuals.
Yes. And I would hope that more people across this partisan divide would find the opportunities to work across the divide, right? If I say anything about RBG, is that she was able to do that in amazing ways. And some people criticized her for that. But the reality is we exist in a society where democratic principles are about debate. So you have to debate it out. And so in that way, right, she was willing to stand there and do the debate and work and debate it out with Scalia of all people. So exactly. I just feel like, right, we have especially as we think about the pending decisions and Supreme Court nominations, I think what's important is how are we going to come together as a nation, as a community, and not be divisive and not be and embrace all of the cultures, right? All of the things, just like she did.
Which is also what we talk a lot about in corporate America. Many of us are in corporate America and we're having similar issues. You can disagree with someone.
Exactly.
And still be able to work with them. And you do not have to be best friends with everyone you work with.
Hopefully you're not.
Exactly. What was it? 15% or 15% are not going to like you. Mine is kind of climbing. Oh, look at it.
Yeah, you just have to go with it, right? I mean, let's face it. 15% of the people didn't like RBG. At least 15,
at least
all the time, right? I mean, at least 15 to 20% didn't like her. And she wasn't trying to win those people over. She was trying to do the good work with the people who wanted to do the good work. And so
I think that's a testament to all of us. We can do the good work, whatever that good work is for us.
And we have to do it sometimes in trying in difficult spaces, right? I think, I'm not on the Supreme Court. I would not want to be on the Supreme. I don't want to argue with Clarence.
I have too many skeletons in the closet.
I have to even get close to it. That's not the kind of debate that I want to do. I don't want to debate with Clarence Thomas, and I don't want to debate with. I wouldn't have wanted to debate with Scalia. Like that's not my talent, but that was her talent. So then to figure out where your talents are, I have different talents.
Let's go back to this idea of the support structure, because it's so important when you're in roles like a CDO or a diversity practitioner. I know one time, which was a little controversial, and the person that asked me was a little offended by my response. Hence that number climbed from 15 upwards. But one of the things she asked me, she was writing a book and she was interviewing me as part of one of her chapters. And she asked me, how am I able to balance my life? And I said, well, I had to get a wife. And she was really offended by that. And I had to, I said, well, traditionally or in the past, a wife meant somebody that could do all these things.
That's right. I used to long for a wife.
Yes, I still do. I long for a wife or a husband, but a wife.
I know what you mean. I'm saying in that vein, right? In that vein, right? I mean, I know all these people who, especially people who are, a little bit older than we are, their wives literally typed their dissertations or wrote their papers or,
oh my goodness.
They cook and clean and do all the work at home, and you come home and everything's done. And I'm like, what would that look like? I don't know.
In order to be able to, as you know, I was a single mom.
Yes.
And I had a small business, a growing small business with a really big brand. And I had to really struggle with doing all the extras that were required to be able to put food on the table, get my all these other things I couldn't do. And the only way that I was able to do that was by creating a support structure.
Right.
That I could go to and ask for the help that I needed without feeling embarrassed or reprimanded.
Yes.
For not falling in line with my cultural peers.
Yes. That makes total sense. And I use this example a lot because when I'm giving speeches, and when I used to give all these speeches, and I would talk about my mom, and then I would say how I grew up with all these really talented women of color. Some white, it's a couple white women as well, but just women in general, I guess, who are really talented and just really, what we would use now, fierce, right?
Right.
But what I realized later, right, when I used to tell these stories in my 20s, I would just say, oh, well, my mother surrounded me with these wonderful women who just were fierce and they had great jobs and they were great people and blah, blah, blah. And then I realized that was just my mother's network. It was her community of support. She needed somebody to pick us up from school when she couldn't be there. She needed someone to help us get get clothes sometimes when she had to travel, right? She had to travel and sometimes we had to go shopping. She needed someone to make sure that we were doing our homework sometimes when we had a caretaker who would come to the house, but that wasn't enough, right? So there are all these things that I realize now, right? That's what parents, right? And particularly often women have to do is find that community of support right? I use that Obama administration example all the time when they banded together so that women wouldn't talk over each other, right? I mean, so that men wouldn't talk over the women. And they did this thing
Yes,
where all the women
I
started
love
to
that.
refer to each other. I love it, right? But that's working in community. That's women working in community and recognizing that they needed to come together to be able to, right, deal with that situation. And similarly, when we're thinking about raising children or our lives, we've often had to work in community because that's the nature of what it means to to have children, to take care of elders, right, to do all of the things where the burden of care disproportionately still falls on one gender more than the other.
And we were sorry, Lisa, we've been talking or hinting at or being direct with this idea that as new practitioners, new diversity or seasoned practitioners of diversity inclusion, they need that. We need that.
We need community. We need networks. We need help. If anything that this pandemic has demonstrated to me is that we're in isolation, right? In this pandemic, so many of us, even if we're with our families, we're in isolation with our families. So
Right.
how are we going to work together? How are we going to build community together? And now that question seems more pressing than ever, and particularly with the divisions that we're seeing, right? We know as we left the workplaces, people were having a really hard time in the workplaces. People were fighting, people weren't getting along, people were back on their heels,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yes.
And so I think this is the time to figure out, how do we work better? How do we work better together? And let me say this, I disagree vehemently with lots of people, lots. And I have lots of information in my head and research. But I also know that sometimes I have to work with people to get them to that place. Now, for any listener out there who's like, well, I don't want to work with blah, blah, blah. Now, I'm not going to work with someone who denies my right to exist as a human being. That's different, right? That's different. Right. That's not something you can work through.
Right. What is that? Yeah, they're ghosting you, basically.
Right. Like, yeah, if someone thinks that you as a person of color, or you as a woman, or you as an LGBTQ person, or you as a person with a disability, or you as a person, a Jewish person, or you as an Arab person, or you in any way are less than and do not deserve, you are not human, right? You're less than human. No, you can't work through that with someone. That's not like a discussion.
And you should know too when that is the case, so you can step off.
You can just step away from that, because that is different. That's not about working to consensus or working in community. That's about annihilation, and sometimes it's about genocide. But that's totally different. I'm talking about when we disagree. You and I might disagree. We might disagree on how the best approach to some particular diversity and inclusion problem, for instance, right? Like some people believe more in affirmative action than others, or affirmative opportunity. That's a point where we can go into the detail and say, okay, well, why do you believe that? And why do you believe that this is the approach? And then I can talk about why I believe this is approach. That's different, right? And our approaches, we may never agree on the same approach. But that's different than you trying to annihilate me.
Yeah, exactly. And that's very different. And that's very different. I think about when I was running my old company. I remember there were many times when I wanted to jump over the cliff. Not literally, of course, but I was just ready to give up because it was so much. And I remember turning to people, including yourself, at different points and being able to get the support I needed. But those people respected me, and I could be vulnerable with them and be able to say, look, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do that. And I think to your point about how important community is right now is you need to be able to say, I'm feeling isolated.
I'm feeling isolated. I'm feeling vulnerable. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I don't know what the next steps are, right? We just had an executive order issued on 9/22 from the federal government that for all corporations and all companies, maybe we'll talk about that next week, I know we were going to talk about negotiation, but we can push that back because there won't be much to negotiate with this executive order. So this executive order basically is eliminating all trainings related to race, gender, and other salient identities that have been disproportionately disenfranchised historically. What that will mean is that that will have an impact on our corporations and our higher education institutions. And people are already asking me, what will we do next? I'll answer that next week. But the question is, I think right now is, how do we work in community? We can't solve these issues alone. So I spent this weekend on the phone with everyone that I know, who I know knows anything about this legal situation that we're in. And so really trying to delve into this and thinking, how do we work together? That is what RBG taught us, working together and thinking through very difficult legal ramifications and what will that look like as we move forward. Let's say we can never do the trainings in the way that we did them before, but there's always a way forward. It's just a question of figuring it out. That's what RBG would have done. Figure out the way forward. And that is what I want.
That is exactly true. And thank you for that, because we were supposed to talk about negotiations. However, I think that in testament or in honor of RGB, we wanted to.
Yeah, absolutely. These are timely discussions for everyone out there. We want to address the salient and most pressing issues.
But we do definitely want to talk about that 922 order that, and I want to hear, and I'm sure everybody else does as well, is what is being done about it. What are you guys doing about it? But let's talk about that also next week, because I think next week maybe you'll have a better sense of what steps you're going to take.
Yes.
So let's talk about women that have inspired you. Can you name some of those women that have inspired you?
Absolutely. So
of course I want to jump up first and say it, but go on.
Well, of course, you.
Oh, you're so funny.
No, it's true. I mean, you started your own magazine, Color, you've done a lot of things. And so I always think of people, often what we do is we try to think of those people who've inspired us, who are, the Maya Angelou's, the Toni Morrisons, the sort of those people out there in the world. And I'm fortunate enough, I've had the opportunity to meet some of those people because of the job that I do, quite frankly, right? But for most of us, we don't get to meet those people. They're just out there as superstars in super space, and we're just,
Who's your superstar? I want to know about your superstar.
My superstar?
You can have two. I'm going to give you two because I have two.
Mm-hmm. My superstars are, well, one's a man, I know, but it's because he just did things so well, and that's James Baldwin. He's my superstar.
Okay.
He really is. And then well, I do love Toni Morrison, and I love her work, and it's just, she was so influential as a writer. But the other superstar is an Indigenous writer by the name of Lelia Watson, and it's because she, as an Australian Indigenous person who's done a lot of things, but also came up with this quote that I really, really, really like, which is, if you've come here to help me, then well, I'm going to mess it up, but it's basically you have to actually come to work with someone because it's about your liberation as well as their liberation, right? Not just about helping the person in some patronizing way. So those are my two. And then I will say, and then there's my family, my mom, my grandmother, and all the women that they surrounded me with, who are amazing.
I have, I'm going to say that the first one is Amelia Earhart. She was just such a kick-ass. Can I say that?
Yeah, of course.
She was just such a bold woman during her time. I mean, wearing pants, flying a plane.
She did it all.
She did it all. She was just an amazing woman. When I was 12, 13, I used to just think that I wanted to be just like her. So
I took flying lessons.
Of course you did. As did I. I actually went to school for aeronautical science because of Amelia Earhart.
Did you? Well, I took lessons right up there in Massachusetts, out on that at that airfield off Route 2.
That's what's the name of that? I was in New Hampshire, but we can talk about
Yeah.
that.
Okay. We'll talk about that. Yeah.
But Amelia Earhart, and then I have to tell you that I know it's gonna sound like the same thing everybody says, but I listened to Maya Angelou once, and I was walking. I got there a little late to the conference she was speaking at, but I wanted to go and see her, and she had already started, and I was all the way in the back, and there was no way I was going to sit in the back. So I was going to the front. And when she was speaking, she was like speaking in tongue. It was so beautiful and profound. It's the only time in my life I've gotten goosebumps from a speaker.
She was a beautiful orator. The way her command of language, her command of voice, and command of her own presence was, I mean, it was something to something that phenomenal, actually. So when she said phenomenal woman, right, which is her work, she really was phenomenal. And so it's true. She is riveting in so many ways. And you just reminded me.
That's a great
Riveting.
word for her.
Yeah.
And then of course, other than my my family, all these women, all these amazing women, but there was one woman that I actually disliked very much, but I always looked at her and thought, I never want to be like her.
Yes. It's so funny that you said that, because the person who came to my mind is this woman named June Jordan, who I really liked. And I loved her laugh. She did this thing, Poets for the People, out in California. I loved her. But the thing that she taught me was about looking at those people also that you don't want to be like.
Exactly. I won't say the person's name, but I thought she was just one of the worst people in the world. And the way she treated people. So I remembered when I started my own company, I made sure that I never treated my employees the way she treated hers.
Well, remember, it is Maya Angelou who said, right? It's not, we won't remember what people said.
Exactly.
How people treated us and how we felt.
How they made you feel.
They made us feel. And that, some people just, that's not what they're thinking about.
Yes, yeah. So I think, coupled with all these inspiration, RGB, I just didn't want to say it, but God, she was such an inspiration.
She was.
I was so sad that she passed.
Me too. I've been sad, and I've been, the thing about her legacy is that, so people have been asking me, are you sad about what's happening in the courts, etc.? Yes, but not, I'm sad because it's about her legacy. All of the things that she stood for, all of the things that she fought for all those years. And if you read, even as she was ill, right, she was still doing all of those things. She was just about to do a wedding for a friend of hers, right? I mean, so much still penning different decisions and writing things. And so I just feel like, to that legacy, we as a community, we owe something to that legacy in terms of, right, I've said this, I'm going to try to register people to vote. I'm going to go out there and do that. And so whatever it is that you do to support that legacy, whoever you are, right, I'm going to also get one of these.
Yes. Again, if I think in support of RGB, in support of what she stood for, I personally am going to wear this all week. Of course, I'll wash it in between just in case.
No doubt. We had no doubt.
But I will send you one so you can wear it next time you and I are together.
Great. And I also want to say to all the people out there, these are tough times. So find your inspiration where you can get it. I know we've all been a little sad. If it's not about, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, we've been sad about other things during this time. The pandemic has brought all kinds of pandemic and disparities and things. So try to find inspiration where you can, and find someone who gives you that kind of inspiration, and remember to work in community, because that's what we need to do.
Love that. Dr. Coleman, thank you so much for joining us. You have been watching the Roar webinar series, Special Mondays with Dr. Lisa Coleman.
And we'll be back with you about 922 executive order next time.
That's right. That's right. So let's try to do negotiating skills and the executive order.
Well, yes, because you have to negotiate your way through this executive order.
Ooh. Save the date, October 15th. We have the ROAR Virtual Conference 2.0. Amelia Ceja from Ceja Vineyards is the keynote speaker, and Dr. Coleman is the moderator for the panel. So we look forward to having you there as well. Have a great week. And Lisa, we'll jump back in a minute.
Yes. See everyone later. Thank you so much.
Thank you.